where it says public share, click on the public share link. It's location, public share.
Down here?
Up, down in the middle.
Oh, yeah, there. That's a link?
Yep. It is on my computer.
Yes, that's a link.
Okay, so if that works for you, you see what I did? I went to Canvas. And the very first folder, there's a folder called Reference. It was the first one we went through the first day of class. And there's this text file here, and it's that URL that gets you to. So if you open that up, oh, you might have it's RDP, but this is really not working. Now it's running. Are your machines running? This is horrible.
You can try it on your Windows browser. Grab that URL and go to Chrome.
So we need to download that file.
Yeah, just the file on the right.
Yeah, the big whatever.
Yeah, the tar file on the right.
Yeah, big 0, 1, 7.
Okay, so if you manage to open that up, you can get that URL, and then you can punch that in here. And this is where you would download the Linux image, which we don't want to do, but we're in the right share. And if you click on this little eye that shows up over here, you get this menu, and then you can click on this public share. Oh yeah, there you go. The public share is the link, it's the text. And if you click on that, you will see, that's the Linux image, and here's the pig tarball that I'd like you to download, because it'll take a while to do it. And then, where am I? Close some stuff.
Is yours still downloading, Evan? Or
No, it's only 42 megabytes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And then back to good old Canvas, there's a new folder up there called Pig. And it's got a PowerPoint, this example we'll go through, and this pig text. And this pig text is the list of steps that I did to install. But don't start that yet because, well, first off, you need to get the files down. And then I want to go through it, and maybe somebody can spot why I wound up with wrong privileges or permissions. But let's start with the PowerPoint and get into what pig is. So for that, I can get out of Linux and I can get into, no, actually, what I really want to do is I want to go to a whole different So pig is this language which was designed for people who don't want to learn JavaScript and still wanted to do data mining. And apparently it's called pig because the idea is that pig will eat anything, and this system will eat any kind of data. And there is that sort of very flexible structure of this kind of data where you can get like a website logging people coming into the website, or Target logging data, and for whatever reasons, the records don't always come out the same. It'll make a record, sometimes the fields won't be there, or none of the fields will be there. So the data is very uneven, and systems like Pig will deal with that. Again, because we're not looking for precision data. Okay, so here's a link up there. I think this one is a reasonable link, but mostly that's just to give credit for the text that I stole, okay? So if you start thinking about millions of transactions on cell phones, or on Twitter pages, or on Facebook pages, or in Target stores, there's just tons of information that will allow business, pricing, legal people to make all kinds of decisions if they could just figure out what all that data means. So there, Hadoop was born, but to do Hadoop you have to write JavaScript and understand some stuff. So they actually invented two things. They invented Pig and they invented Hive. Hive lets you write what look like almost SQL kinds of commands. And it's good for a certain class of problems. And Pig uses this other funny kind of algebra, the set theory, and it's good for a particular set of problems. It's interactive or script-based. What we're going to do is we're going to write a script with a series of phases. We'll process the data, and then we'll filter it, and then we'll process it, and we'll combine it, and then we'll get an answer. But you can literally open it up interactively and do one step, and then type in and do it another step. You don't have to put all the commands together in a script. And what we're doing here is called data flows. So if this was a computer science college and you were taking computer science, you would have at least one, if not more, courses on a subject called data flow. It's a whole different way of thinking. I'm not even sure programming is the right word. It's a whole different way of dealing with data. And I'm going to drag you through it, and it's good to understand that that stuff exists. But obviously we're not going to be experts if we spend 2 days on it. Pig also supports, well, I shouldn't say also, it supports two things, loading and processing. And I find the loading as interesting as the processing. You take random streams of data, and they can have funny characters in them. They can be character arrays, they can be strings, they can be foreign language, they can be whatever you want. And the first line generally in your Pig script is, suck this data in, and here's how I want you to map it, and here's how I want you to treat it. So you'll have a line like is from a log record on an internet site where it's getting hits, and you'll decide what the first field, what you want to do with the first field, and the second field, and the third. And you can map them into character types, you can combine them as they're being loaded, you can leave them out because you don't really care. All those choices. So this loading process is really quite important to make the system usable. Because again, you're starting with the hypothesis that the data is not really the data you wanted, it's not in the format you wanted, it's not complete, but there's so much of it you can get interesting information out of it. So after you have it loaded, now you've assigned names to the fields, and then you can start processing it by referencing those fields, and that's what we'll do. And then you will basically transform the data, and you'll see what that means in a minute. Some of these are, like we'll do the same word count project, and you'll see how nice and easy it is to express it in Pig, and then we'll look at a couple other ones. I should tell you up front that our goal is going to be, we are going to take the 450 records you generated from your client, okay? And in order to keep us all sane, I'm going to give you like an XML or or Jason, I forget what it is. I'm going to give you a file so that we're all starting with the same data, okay? And we'll like export it out of Mongo into Pig. And then your homework will be, you need to come up with a set of Pig commands to tell me something interesting. And I'll let each of you suggest something, and I'll say that's great, or I'll say that's way too complicated. I don't think you'll be able to do it, but go ahead if you want to try. Or I'll say that's way too simple. Do something more complicated, okay? And examples would be, you'll have all this data, and a question you might answer is, which hour period of the day has the highest volume of sales? Or which store sold the most copies of this particular disk? Those are the kind of questions you'll do. And what you'll take in is 450 data records, and then you'll name all the fields, and then you'll do operations to map it and reduce it and give me those kind of answers. Okay? So I think the ones, we're going to look at some really simple ones, and then we'll look at a couple that are a little more complicated. And then when it's time to do your homework, the ones you do for your homework will likely be less complicated than the most complicated ones we look at. But maybe you'll be aggressive and really do something cool. So there's two ways of running this. It turns out you can run it in local mode, and it doesn't even use Hadoop. Now, if you had a simple little problem, then do it that way. If you have a whole bunch of data, well, that's crazy. Which, of course, makes it really nice, because what you do is you build real small sample data, and you just play with the Pig until you're debugging, it's giving you the results you want. And then you rerun exactly the same Pig script against Hadoop, against the gigabytes of data, and you have a pretty warm and fuzzy feeling it's going to work. Under the covers, Pig will, it's basically like it's going to compile it. It's going to take the intentions you stated in this funny algebra and turn it into map and reduce jobs. But you don't ever have to do that. And then you can run them 3 different ways. You can put your commands in a script, and that's what we're going to do. Or you can run grunt, and then it's like a command line. And you can type each line and let it run and see what the result is and type the next one. And if you were really a real jock and like you work in some marketing department, that might be your job. People would run in and say, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And you'd type a couple of commands, well, here's the data. Well, tell me all about Redmond. And then you'd type something else, and you would be subsetting and aggregating data literally interactively with the script. Or you can choose to express your thought in Pig because it's easier, and then embed your Pig in a Java program, and the compiler will just process the Pig, turn it into Java, and run it with the rest of the Java. We won't be doing that. So these, the next 15 slides or so, I pulled from multiple documents. I never found one that I thought was easy enough to use and complete. So unfortunately, you have multiple sources here. But again, you will load data, and then when you're done, you will store the data. Like you will bring in a bunch of data, manipulate it, and then store it. You can stream the data, have it like coming out. You can filter it. You can group and join it. You can sort it, and you can combine and split. And then in the middle of all that, you can have all these expressions, functions, diagnostics, macros, file system commands, and we'll see some examples of that. So it's supposed to be easy to program. Embarrassing parallel is the term I was struggling before. I might have actually said that. And then the Pig can really focus on optimizing. You don't have to focus on how to optimize it. And then if there's something you want it to do and it doesn't do, it allows you to extend the language with a function, and then you can call your own functions in the middle of your Pig code. So these 2 pages are pretty useful. They both have more information than you want, but they sort of have all the information you want. So I'll open them just from here just for a second to give you a flavor of what's there. So these are when you input your data, you'll think of your data as like space separated or comma separated or something. You'll choose how to interpret each of those values in each row of data. You can assign it and tell it to interpret it as an integer, byte array, big integer, big decimal, all these sorts of things. And there's these things called tuples, bags, and maps, which is one of the harder parts of the language, and we'll talk about those separately. And then you can group by, cube by, ask for all the distinct, filter by, do a for each, group, join, order them, rank them,
It's like
do
a
a
cross.
union, bunch of for eaches.
It's like a cross between JavaScript and SQL.
Well, it is sort of a scripting. And then these are functions you can do. Give me the absolute value of this, give me the cosine of this. You can do math functions on it. You can do all kinds of counts and maths. You can do string substitutions, all the string things you'd ever want to do. You can do all the date time things you'd ever want to do.
Adding tuple.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And then these are the load functions. This is if you use, it's kind of like trying to say, if you know SQL and you're trying to express it in Pig, well, here's the thought, and here's how it's expressed. So this is really useful if you know SQL. How do they say in SQL, how would I say the same thing? Okay. There's really a fundamental difference here, though, between SQL and Pig, because SQL is working on rows of data, and Pig is taking like vectors of data and then converting them, and then converting them, and converting them. So these will never map exactly. It's like this operation is not really the same as this operation. Don't fall into that trap. But if you're saying to yourself, I want to sort this, or I want to accumulate it, then it'll help you find this as an index to find the right one. But remember that what it does is different. Joins, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's pretty good. It's conceivable, I just did a bad thing, did I know? It's conceivable you'll get through this, I don't know, we'll probably spend 2 or 3 classes on Pig and never have to go there, okay? So don't let that scare you because of how complete it was. On the other hand, knowing Hadoop and knowing Pig is a pretty useful thing. And then here's another document. And this is sort of this Apache group, which is an open system group. They're the ones who sort of control the sources for Hadoop. And then Pig is a subset of Hadoop. And so I went to the Apache site under the topic of Hadoop, under the topic of Pig, under the topic of docs. And you get to this page. And there are tons and tons of explanations on how to do everything and conventions and reserved words and examples of doing this and examples of doing this. So, I mean, this works well for me because I do everything I do by finding an example, cutting and pasting and changing the names.